Back to the body. The body centered at the Dantian and the Mingmen. My body has mass, and consequently it wants to sink. We call that gravity. And we need to attend to the opposite of that as well. Spirit has no mass, and that has a tendency to rise. So in the same way that my body is constantly being pulled down, my spirit is constantly being pulled up. We tend to resist that in the same way that we resist the pull down. But if you let it, nature would be constantly bringing your spirit up. It would be constantly cheering you up. When children struggle to remain in a bad mood, we call it sulking. They're in a sulk. For me, that's what adults are constantly. We're constantly in a sulk because we're resisting. We're resisting cheer, that tendency for the spirit to lift. And if we're resisting this one, then we also have to resist this one. So it's only really when we relax properly and allow the spirit to lift can we actually sink as well. So depression for me is really what happens when you don't allow the spirit to lift. You can see when people are sinking physically, they just tend to collapse and droop. Gravity is the natural tendency for things with mass to sink down. Levity is the natural tendency for things without mass, especially spirit, to lift. And the technique that we've learned to remain in a sulk, to resist levity, is talking to ourselves. Gravity will draw you down to Mother Earth. Levity will draw you up to Father Sky. So the mother's protective and nurturing, offers comfort. The father challenges. The father challenges you to leave the comfort of the mother and to venture into a bigger world. That's spirit. Now let's just breathe. And you can feel it here. So as you breathe in and open up here, this is levity. What we want to do is feel the spirit, feel that natural lightness infuse the body. And then here, this is gravity taking over. So that lightness disappears and you're all sinking now. The sense that what rises internally. The sense that the rising energy is coming up the spine, up the inside of the spine. And the sinking is just all around. It's within, it's the body, the flesh, but all around you as well. But then right in the core of that, there's this column that's rising up. So this in-breath phase is the spirit trying to escape the cloying mother. And then this is the compassionate, suffocating embrace of the mother. This is the spark trying to leap out. And then riding horse. Feel that pull down And almost like you're hiding the spirit, you're enclosing the spirit. If I release the spirit, then something would pop up. We sense the sinking as very much to do with the earth. The earth is trying to pull me down into it. The earth wants me to die and just decompose and become part of it. We want to fill the up similarly. There's something about the vastness of the universe, the vastness of space, that's just drawing me out of myself and lifting me up. So only when we have these two forces in operation with mindfulness and awareness will energy properly enter the situation. Energy in the sense of chi, in the sense of this sort of fizzy, tingly medium that just surrounds and envelops and dances around everything. Okay, now let's try this one where we reach back and we pull the cape. Just imagine you're Superman or Batman, and you just catch the cape or the cloak that's behind you with your little finger and bring it round. Feel the little fingers. Here in Israel, if someone wants to sort of mock Englishness, they will mimic drinking a cup of tea with their little finger stuck out. So you think about afternoon tea, people politely partaking of this beverage and maybe a scone or a cucumber sandwich, and small talk, just chatting, not in order to pass information to and fro, but simply to evoke the energy, the spirit of afternoon tea, this very delightful, easy, cheerfulness. This is what we want to get used to, using the movements not simply to engage in physical exercise, but to conjure the lightness, the spirit. So each of the exercises will have its own quality of lightness, its own spirit. We just want to make sure that that's the aim of the work that we do. And now let's try the reaching one. And again, feel the spirit. Feel that part of you that's reaching out with the mind. And then it changes because you realize you've grabbed the thing and you can pull it back in. You want to feel the return, feel that change in mood as you go from this expectant, eager reach into this almost greedy claim and draw in. So again, it's spirit. We're looking at the spirit. So a lot of the people I meet here, their experience of England is either London or holidays taken on a barge on the canals. So they have experience of operating a lot. And they also have experience of pulling in the boat, pulling in the barge and tethering it. And so they connect with this exercise really well because they can remember the effort that was required. Just start it getting into the legs. So my fingers open in order to take a big grip. The same with my foot. My toes are doing exactly the same as what my fingers are doing. So my hand would be grabbing the rope, wrapping around the rope to pull it. My toes are gripping the ground to pull me into that foot. And then feel the arm like a tentacle. So there's a sense that my limbs muscularly, they're a whole series of lateral ring muscles which operate peristaltically to get this flow of energy down them, rather than these longitudinal muscles that tense in order to get this lever action. It's quite easy to feel in the arm. We want the same feeling in the leg. So this sense that you're squeezing like the tube of toothpaste in order to get something coming out at the end, and that's the energy and the movement. So I'm tightening my leg, I'm squeezing it with my muscles in order to lengthen it. And then the same thing, but up and down. Now we're ringing the bells. They don't connect so well with this, but I do. Feel that reach coming from your spine, coming from your back. So you have to turn away from it so that your back has access. And then turning towards it will draw it in. This is my muscles in my lower back. This is the muscles in my belly. This is the unit of movement, a straightening followed immediately by a bending. And then just back to riding horse. Feel the legs coming out and then down. So this space is really open. And now straightening and bending the legs. I straighten this leg and then I bend it. Again, with this feeling of squeezing the leg in order to straighten it. These lateral ring muscles are tightening to get the leg straightening and extending. and then feel the movement. So if I reach out for something, there's a sense that my expectant mind has reached the object almost before my hand, and then I'm already bringing it in and claiming it. The spirit moves out. My straightening leg is reaching for that piece of ground because it's going to bend and pull me back into it. So that's the movement of the energy in the spirit, is down the leg towards the empty foot. But the body, of course, is being pushed the other way. So it's what we want to feel, the spirit reaching in one direction as the body is being pushed in the other. Feel the drive. I straighten this leg and that drives me down into this leg. This is especially important when we step. Now using it to step. So I'm going to bring the weight into this leg so that I can step up with this one. So I pull with this foot to pull myself into it, but then I straighten this leg to drive myself down so that this foot can just pop up naturally. And then I straighten the leg to extend it out, and then I pull the ground with this leg, and then I really straighten this one to drive myself down, and then I pluck up this foot. I've got to drive myself through the leg and into the ground. Gravity simply isn't enough to get me to go into the ground. I'm so used to gravity. I'm so used to balancing on top of my legs all the time when I'm walking and standing. So I have to basically force myself down through the leg. So I have a sense that I'm in the ground underneath the foot before I bring the other foot off the ground. Pull and straighten. So I'm really going down, and then I can bring this foot up. And this is especially important in the form as well. Pull and drive myself down. I'm pushing that ground there in order to force myself into the ground underneath the foot. If I just do it naturally with gravity, there's a sense of that I'm sitting onto this hip here. And then I can bring the foot up and have a sense of being balanced and everything, but I'm not in the ground. We want to get into the ground. And for that, we have to really drive. So I straighten this leg and it just drives me down. And then this foot can come up. Pull, push with this leg and it sends me down. Feel it. It's like, in order to get into the ground, I have to go through the outside edge. So this is pushing me down into the leg, but also pushing me as far out here as possible so that I can really cut with that outside edge. And then there is this sense that that energy has come underneath the other foot and scooped it off the ground. So I straighten here, that drives me out here. This cuts under and plucks up this foot. And I feel very much sort of body as one unit, very much that my legs are part of me. They're not something I'm just balancing on top of. Pull, push, I go out, I cut under, and this foot dutifully comes up. Pull and drive down, out and down. And then there really is a sense that you've got underneath this foot. You know, you've brought it right up because you've scooped underneath it. Bring it back to riding horse. And now using the same action, straightening and bending the leg to turn the body. I straighten the leg and it turns me here. And then I bend the leg, it draws me back to the front. Then I straighten the other leg and bend. Again, if you can, with this feeling of squeezing the leg in order to straighten it. Feeling that your whole body is pretty tense, but it's a tension that moves around. It's not chronic and fearful. The whole body is toned and tight, and you're squeezing these ripples of energy through it. And with each action, there's a feeling. This is what happens when you bring energy in. Energy, in a sense, is just feeling. We just imagine that it's much more difficult than it really is. We have to be able to generate our own difficulty, because working against that difficulty will help keep your mind with it. The mind tends to be quiet when it's having to do something really difficult, but it will also just pack it full of energy and feeling. And you'll activate the spirit much better. Sense that you're having to make a real effort. Your body is really in the grip of the exercise. And then the same thing, but a bit more quickly, and using it for knocking the gates of life, the one where we strike the belly and the back. So I straighten the legs, and that straightens the arms, and then I bend the leg, and that brings the hands in to strike, and then I straighten this leg and bend it. So straight, bend, straight. And then riding horse again. So the heaviness, gravity, pulling my loose body down, particularly focusing on the sacrum, which is the heavy bone, and then the levity, which is like a tendency to become silly. So that's what we tend to block out in order to have control, in order to keep an eye on what's happening and make sure we're doing it right. Just want to let that go. So there can be this sense of something reaching up through you all the time, cheering you up. So the controlling mind, that sort of rational, logical control. For me, it's very much like a march, like a two-step, jump, 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 jump. And this lightness is much more like treble time, like a waltz. It's got this sort of light. And they say that the heart beats it with a count of three. So dun, 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 dun. It's not one, and it's not 1, 2, 1, 2. That's more like a military march. It's what we're trying to get away from. So, when children, when they're walking and they're in a really sort of good mood and they start skipping, they're just throwing a leg forwards. That's basically a three-step. That's a waltz. They're waltzing. And they say that the waltz is really good for the heart. It's got a natural rhythm. So, most waltzes are about the beginning of each bar is the heartbeat, and then you've got these two ancillary notes just dancing. Just to cheer yourself up is all you have to do is sing a waltz, sing in 3/4 time or 6/8. So that William James quote, I don't sing because I'm happy because I sing. That's the thing, is all you have to do. That's what they say. If you're in a bad mood, it's all you have to do is just start singing and it will cheer you up. That's what the church service is for. Ring the spirit up with song. And now let's turn again, but using the one leg, just to feel the absolute difference between the leg straightening as a back leg and then the leg straightening as a front leg. So they feel so different. This is what we want to just acknowledge. So my spirit is reaching forwards, the attack is forwards, but it's really driving me into the back leg. So in a sense, that sort of the back leg, when the straight leg is the front leg, in a sense, it's much richer. It's here, something in me is really hungrily reaching forwards, but I'm driving down here. Whereas this, single whip, it's a bit tight. It's almost like the energy isn't as free somehow. This is lifting hands, and then this is single whip. And the difficulty is just releasing across here so that you can get into the back leg. We tend to hold on here, largely, I think, just to protect the body. I just want the sense that this leg can really drive me down into this leg. And particularly here. And then let's try the same thing, just keep it going. Let's change over to the other leg. But remember that clip I sent of the guy doing Tai Chi in China? And what struck me was how when he stepped, he'd do sort of these long steps. And then when he brought his weight into his front foot, he'd really allow the back heel to slide back so that he could really get his back leg as straight as possible. And that feels, especially the way we're working that feels like it really needs to happen. So when I straighten this leg in order to turn here, I just allow that heel to slide out so that I can get the leg much straighter than I could otherwise. And then I bring the heel back in now. And then when I sink back, I just pivot on the heel here and bring the toes up. So I'm pulling and I'm pushing. You just want to get used to sliding the heel out, because I do it in the form all the time now. It's quite interesting because it's something about just letting a little bit of energy escape behind you that stops it being so sort of aggressively tight here. And so something can release out, and then this is just a little bit lighter. So when we're using this straightening to drive us into the supporting leg, it just takes a lot more strain. The leg has to work that much harder. So here I'm straightening this leg to get into the ground underneath this foot. And the same here, I'm straightening this leg to make a connection with the ground here. On this one, it feels like you're doing a calf stretch because the calf gets really tight because you're straightening the leg so much and the heel is really going back. Back to riding horse. Connecting with the mother, with the down, with the earth. That's there all the time. This is there when you bring your mind to it. It's like the father. The father's often not present. Or not in evidence. They're like the absent father, the father that's at work or out on business. But the threat is always there, like the mother. You know, I'll tell your father when he gets home. So this sense that there's that disciplinary presence, this threat of exposure to a world that's much larger and more dangerous than the one of the mother. So I'm being drawn down, I'm being wrapped up in my cloak. It's all that sort of mothering energy. And yet within that, there's this spark that's like an ember that's threatening to burst into flame. And now let's just try a bit of this one just to finish. Feel the figure of 8 inside each foot. So the foot is really rolling, very healthy for the feet. So with this one, you can really feel that there's so much happening. There's all these different levels, all these different species of energy, all active and all in balance somehow. So it's an ecosystem of energy. There isn't a dominant energy, really. That would be an ego system. So the ego is just a dominant control that blocks out all the diversity and the detail and just imposes one fascist point of view. So here, everything is dancing, everything is wobbling. It's always threatening to either just combust or collapse. So spirit brings each of these energies alive. activates them. And then my mind, my healthy mind, not my thinking mind, is then just used to equilibrate, to keep everything in balance. So nothing can take over. There isn't a single one that can dominate the others. If that happens, then there'll just be imminent collapse. And it will just become a mechanical system. And in a sense, chi, that prevalent energy that's just everywhere, is just the condition for all of these different aspects of energy to cohabit. And you really feel it in China. I mean, China's so, especially where we were, both times I've been to very verdant places full of vegetation. So in Hainan, they get 2 crops a year of everything, including the coconuts. And it's just so rich. It's so green and hot and humid. There's just chi everywhere, in sort of more aggressive, more arid, like here. There's less prevalent chi. You have to work really hard to actually generate it. In China, you're just walking around and you're sort of getting drunk. And it's partly, the Chinese, they're so polite, but alert and so ready to smile and become friendly. And it's very much to do with the energy that's part of their culture, which is chi. Now let's just bring it up. So England is very energetic, the environment, the sort of natural environment. When you're out in nature, you just feel that there's an intelligence to the swarming, teeming energy. So the wind here, when the wind blows, you just get buffeted, you get blasted. Whereas in England, it's sort of caressing you and twisting around you, all these sort of Celtic loops and knots. It's there in nature. For me, the most beautiful symbol mankind has ever invented is the yin yang symbol. It's beautiful because it's a circle, it's a curve. And it's got these two movements, one going one way, one going the other. And it's just so rich. So different than the Star of David, which they have here, or the Christian cross, which is just this very mechanical, linear construction of the mind. Nothing natural about it whatsoever. And the Celts had it as well. They were just, you think of those Celtic designs, it's just all to do with flow and spirit. If you come from the British Isles, then basically you're Celtic. They used to think that it was only like Cornwall and Wales, Scotland and Ireland where the Celts retreated to, but they've done DNA testing, found out pretty much, it's everywhere. Celtic genes are everywhere. And we just want to wake that up. We want to wake up our lineage, our traditions. And just connecting with energy. And the energy will wake you up. So that story of the priest, the Christian priest, his best friend was a scientist, and they were chatting, and the scientist friend said, if I could give you categorical proof that Jesus never existed, would you stop believing? He says, no, of course not. He says, because I feel him everywhere. And that is chi. That's just energy, this brightness that colors everything, as long as you're willing to cheer up. Okay, so let's finish.